If you were dropped into a village in 10,000 BC with everything in your pockets, every coin, every card, every note, you would starve within a week. Not because the food did not exist, because nobody would understand what you were holding. The most powerful idea in human history had not been invented yet. And when it finally was, it was not invented by a genius. It was not invented by a king. It was probably invented by someone trying to remember who owed them a fish. And the way it actually happened is so strange that economists have been quietly hiding it in footnotes for 200 years. There are 3 layers to this story. The first one destroys the version you were taught in school. The second one involves soldiers, which honestly should not surprise anyone. And the third one, the one I am saving for the end, is the part that will make you look at every dollar you have ever spent completely differently. We are starting with the lie. Not a small lie. Not a simplification that got out of hand. A fully constructed fictional origin story that has been taught to every economics student on Earth for 200 years as though someone dug it up from the archaeological record. They did not dig it up. They made it up. And the reason they made it up says something uncomfortable about how we prefer our history. Every economics textbook tells the same story. First, there was barter. You have fish, I have shoes, we trade. Then barter got complicated. What if you want shoes but the shoemaker does not want fish? So humans invented money to fix the problem. Clean, logical, inevitable, the anthropologist David Graeber spent years searching for a single documented society that actually worked this way. A real barter economy. Pre-monetary exchange based on direct trade, any evidence whatsoever that the textbook story happened. He found nothing. Not one example. Not one footnote. Not one convincing anecdote from anyone who had actually been there. Think about what that means. Your economics education, and his, and hers, and every person who has ever sat through a lesson on how markets work, was built on a story someone invented. The foundation claim, the reason money supposedly exists, has zero archaeological evidence behind it. None, not a scrap. Economists invented the barter story to make money seem rational and inevitable. It was neither. You were taught a myth and told it was mechanics. So what actually happened? In communities across Mesopotamia, going back at least 30,000 years in some form, researchers kept finding the same thing. Before coins, before gold, before anything you would recognize as currency. There were records, clay tablets, notched bones, tallies of who owed what to whom, tracked carefully across time. Humans invented credit before they invented money. The debt came first. The coin came later. The ledger existed before the thing it was supposed to represent. That is honestly one of the strangest sentences in human history. Let it sit for a second. Your ancestors were tracking complex financial obligations across seasons and settlements using nothing but marks on clay. No coins, no notes, no physical currency of any kind. Just a shared social agreement that the obligation existed and would eventually be settled. The abstract concept of debt, of owing, of being owed, predates every physical object humans ever invented to represent it. You had the idea of money thousands of years before you had money. So, if ancient societies were already running complex credit systems without physical currency, what was the point of inventing a coin at all? The answer is soldiers. It always comes back to soldiers. And once you see what the military did to the history of money, you cannot unsee it. But that is the second layer. We are getting there. First, hold the strangeness of the debt thing for a moment, because most people blow past it and they should not. You invented the concept of owing before you invented anything to pay with. You had the idea of debt before you had an object that could settle it. That is not an accounting quirk. That is a fundamental fact about how human minds work. The social obligation came first. The coin was just a convenience invented much later by someone who needed to pay an army. The answer is soldiers. Around 3000 BC something started happening across multiple civilizations at the same time. Large standing armies. Thousands of professional fighters who needed feeding, equipping, and paying. Spread across territories too vast for any administrator to manage through grain distribution and debt tablets. You cannot hand a soldier a clay tablet that says the king owes him 6 months of barley. He is sleeping in a field. He needs to eat now. He needs something portable, divisible, recognizable to a stranger, and impossible to fake. Researchers, including Niall Ferguson and Jack Weatherford, have traced coined money emerging nearly simultaneously in Lydia, China, and India around the 7th and 6th centuries BC. 3 civilizations. 3 separate inventions. One thing in common. Large armies that needed paying. The coin was not invented to make shopping more convenient, it was invented to pay soldiers. Soldiers spent coins on food. Farmers brought coins back to the palace as taxes. The palace minted more coins to pay more soldiers. That loop, military payroll creating markets as a side effect, is the origin of commercial economy as we know it. The free market started as a weapons program. Honestly, respect, let that sit for a second. Every shop, every market stall, every transaction you have ever made exists because ancient kingdoms needed a way to pay soldiers without carrying grain across a continent. You are a side effect of military logistics. Commerce is a side effect of war. The shopping mall is downstream of the barracks. And here is where it gets genuinely strange. Because before coins arrived, the things humans used as money make almost no logical sense. Cowrie shells. Tiny, smooth, completely useless for anything practical. Used as currency across Africa, South Asia, and East Asia for thousands of years. At the peak of cowrie economies in West Africa, a string of shells could buy land, livestock, or labor. The shells came from the Maldives. Traders carried them 4,000 miles across the Indian Ocean to reach markets that had never seen the ocean. A shell a child could pick up off a beach in the Maldives was purchasing farmland in landlocked West Africa. The shell did not change. The shell did not do anything. It just sat there being small and smooth and hard to fake. And that was all it needed to be. Then, there are the Yappies. The island of Yap in Micronesia used enormous limestone discs as currency. Some of them weigh 4 tons. When ownership changed hands, the stone did not move. Everyone simply agreed it now belonged to someone else. The stone sat where it had always sat. The transaction existed entirely inside collective memory. One stone fell off a boat and sank to the ocean floor before it ever reached Yap. The islanders discussed it. They acknowledged the stone existed. They accepted it as valid currency. For generations, real economic transactions were conducted using a 4-ton rock sitting on the bottom of the Pacific Ocean that nobody alive had ever seen. You are laughing. Do not laugh. You do the exact same thing. This is the layer I told you I was saving. The only thing that makes money worth anything is collective agreement that it is worth something. That is it. That is the whole mechanism. Your $20 is not backed by gold. The United States stopped backing currency with gold in 1971. Nothing happened. Nobody panicked. The dollar kept working because the dollar was never the gold. The dollar was always the agreement. The gold was a prop. A comfort object. A way of making the shared story feel more solid than a shared story needs to feel. The Yappies just never bothered with the prop. They looked at money clearly as a collective agreement about value and decided a large rock nobody could move was as good a symbol of that agreement as anything else. Which it was. Which it is. Your currency is also a large rock on the bottom of the ocean. You just have better graphic design. And once you see that, you cannot unsee it either. The Yappies were not confused about value. They were the only ones being honest about it. Every other monetary system just dressed the same idea in more convincing clothes. Pull that wallet out. Whatever is in there is not what you think it is. It is not a stable store of value. It is not backed by a physical commodity. It is not a modern invention or a natural feature of civilized life. It is the latest iteration of a system that started as a notch on a bone 30,000 years ago. That became a debt tablet in Mesopotamia. That became a coin for paying soldiers in Lydia. That became a cowrie shell on a 4,000-mile ocean crossing. That became a 4-ton rock on the ocean floor that an island agreed was real. The money is not in the wallet. It is in the agreement. It has always been in the agreement. And the agreement started the first time one human looked at another and thought, I will remember what you owe me. Everything since is just making that harder to forget.